March 12th, 2022. I've never been great with birthday presents. The handmade scarf for Lauren that looked more like an accidental wool origami disaster being a prime example. So when Jenna showed up last night with the leather-bound journal, I think my awkwardness was warranted. "You always say you want to write down more memories," Jenna said, with that crooked little smile that makes everything else feel unimportant. We were at Molly's diner because we both secretly love their garish neon lights and undercooked fries, even though we talk smack about them like any self-respecting locals. Jenna was picking at her salad, leaving the cucumbers she hates on my plate because, apparently, they taste like someone trying too hard to be healthy. I ran my fingers over the journal, letting its grainy cover remind me that sitting here was our own small tradition. I looked at her, mock offended. "And you're sure it's not because you got it on sale?" I asked, attempting to be sarcastic as usual. Jenna laughed, her cheeks dimpling. "Oh, that was purely a happy coincidence. Now you don't have an excuse not to remember our memories." I couldn't quite explain the flicker of unease that surged underneath my genuine gratitude. Maybe it was the fact that Jenna has this uncanny knack for twisting gentle humor into thoughtful gestures, like a magician pulling kindness out of their hat over and over again. Or it could have been just that moment I realized, halfway across the paper tablecloth, both of us had been quiet just a little too long. "Now you'll have to get me one for my birthday." "Give and take, Ethan," she said, signing the bottom of the journal's first page with her loopy, scrawling handwriting. Later, I tossed around the day's events in bed, the journal sitting by itself on the nightstand, right where I'd usually place my phone. I fell asleep quickly, the kind of half-conscious collapse that the end of a workweek usually brings. Waking up this morning, I found the journal open. I didn't remember leaving it like that, but I'm forgetful with small details, the type that slips out of your mind midday. The page was mostly blank, except for one line written with my pen. "She lied to you, you know." I stared at the sentence for too many seconds, tempted to tear out the page, but trapped by some ridiculous blend of curiosity and fleeting disbelief. I eventually closed it, decided these tricky pens leak ink instead of charm, and made some coffee as I tried to think about anything else. Discomfort seemed like a dramatic response at the time. Jenna texted mid-morning, suggesting we meet up for coffee since both of us were home. Part of me wanted to bring up the journal entry, but decided against it. Why turn into one of those people seeing ghosts in the ink? It was still chilly outside, with the stubborn remnants of winter refusing to step aside. I met Jenna at the cafe, sitting by the window where the sun warmed the concrete floor, and some of our lighter conversations stuck like easy laughter. She seemed relaxed, softer around the edges like on any lazy Saturday when we had nothing demanding our immediate attention. "Did you at least write something?" she asked between sips of her cappuccino, drawing swirls with her finger on the window pane fogged by our breath. Her questions stumbled into my discomfort, unnoticed by the rest of the world. "Well, would you believe me if I said my pen has a mind of its own?" I joked weakly. "Maybe it's just a writer's spirit trying to communicate through you," she teased, which made the air feel a bit less stable than it had. It's sounding ridiculous, but that little joke clung to me, itching just beneath logic. I tried to smile, really tried not to overthink it. Her laughter was light and genuine, just the way it's always been, and I took reassurance in the way her eyes crinkled with each joyful sound. The unease was still there, tethering me to some quiet insistence that something more was happening. I knew I'd have to face the journal again, yet preferred to focus instead on how Jenna absent-mindedly tied knots with her straw wrapper, a skill she'd mastered to keep her hands busy. It was healthier focusing on real things, human things. At least, that's what I told myself as I watched knots unravel one by one, looping gently in and out beneath her touch. March 13th. I woke up today to the faint tapping sound against my bedroom window. It might have been a branch swaying in the wind, but I know I cut the tree down weeks ago. Maybe the ghost of the tree persists, or maybe I'm just losing it. I forced myself to get out of bed, rubbed the morning wonkiness from my eyes, and face the day. Breakfast was interrupted by a feeling of being watched. You know that sensation when someone's eyes prick the back of your neck. Except I was alone in the kitchen, the morning light casting ordinary shadows despite my skin's insistence otherwise. Rolling my eyes at myself, I grabbed a biscuit. It from the pantry and nearly knocked over a stack of notebooks. Among the jumble, there it was again, the burgundy journal I'd decided to ignore. It never stayed in the spot I left it last. Its leather cover, now gathering an unnerving layer of dust, seemed to whisper my name, inviting rather than demanding. March 14th. Last night the journal's existence loomed over me, tugging at my consciousness while I brushed my teeth as I settled into bed, and even as I finally succumbed to sleep. Today, I set it on the dining table, the wooden surface worn and scarred, much like my willpower. Unable to resist any longer, I cracked it open. My hands trembled like old leaves on a brittle branch. There it was, my handwriting, but not my words. Don't go to the basement. Clear as day, almost annoyed in its simplicity. The basement and I were never good friends, always avoiding each other out of mutual understanding. Low ceilings and darker than an eclipse, it held memories I'd rather forget, childhood hide and seek, my father's eccentric experiments. But curiosity is a terrible beast, isn't it? I glanced at the basement door, its chipped paint daring me to defy the journal's command. March 15th. The power's been flickering all day. Every overcast brings a growl from unseen depths, a storm scratching at the world's surface. I wanted to nap, let the monotonous drip-drip of rain pacify the pounding in my chest, but I had to know. I found myself tiptoeing to the basement door, as if I needed permission to face the challenge. The door creaked open with reluctance, and I took one step down, the wooden board groaning beneath my foot. As the darkness swallowed me whole, an unsettling odor crept into my lungs, earthy, enclosed, and something else. A whisper of rot perhaps, or a memory of something that never was. In the muted light, shapes submerged in dust hovered just beyond comprehension. Any further and I shuddered and retreated upstairs. Maybe the journal knew me better than I cared to admit. March 16th. The journal won't leave me alone. It's grown weary, impatient with my hesitations. I see new entries forming overnight, mocking my caution with perfectly formed letters. They hint at something just out of reach, a reality bending in peculiar ways. The reflection is not yours, I read this morning, reluctantly cracking the book open with a cup of lukewarm coffee in hand. Is it not? I peered into every glassy surface until I laughed at my own paranoia. Yet there I stood, looking at my face, unshaved, a little haggard, same tired eyes staring back, but now shadowed with suspicion. Was there a flicker of something around the edges, something lurking just beyond the brittle surface of sanity? Even funny ha-ha movies do little now. The kind of laughter that erupts with bitterness more than humor. As I sit here, recounting these thoughts, the lights flicker again, sending shadows scurrying for cover. It's hard to tell if the journal is trying to protect me or if it's laying a trap and pulling me in, detaching me from what I once considered real. The quiet of my house breathes with anticipation. Something waits in the silence, wearing the guise of familiarity. My discomfort keeps growing, sticking to my skin like a film that won't wash away. I wonder how much longer my sanity will keep pretending everything is all right. The day after I realized the journal was writing thoughts I never had, I brought it downstairs, intending to throw it into the trash. I told myself that it was just some weird glitch or maybe a prank someone was playing. An elaborate prank designed to spook the overly imaginative, but tangible, logical, rooted in the kind of mischief you could blame on someone. Anne, my roommate, found me sitting at the kitchen table after her night shift ended in the early hours. I was staring at the damn thing as if waiting for it to suddenly offer me its secrets, open its leather cover, and confess why every word felt like an echo of something I hadn't yet said but feared deeply. She dropped her keys in the bowl. "Morning," she yawned, looking over my shoulder. "That thing bothering you again?" They were little things at first. Mundane and easily ignored, almost playful, comments about the weather before it changed, exactly predicting when a neighbor would greet me down to the precise minute. These observations could have been attributed to random chance or clever generalization, but then they turned frighteningly specific. The problem was that yesterday's entry conjured an almost physical reaction within me. "You told Michael about the affair," it recorded, yet I hadn't. My heart skipped a beat at the idea. Impulsively, I slammed it shut and pushed it away, as though somehow I was complicit in it, in the thought itself. I knew this would ruin everything. Anne eyed me, her face softening with concern. She knew about Michael. "You all right? You look like hell." I grumbled something about lack of sleep, painfully aware of the fact we both knew it was a lie. The ice in her voice was gone. "Whatever this is, you should lock it up and throw away the key. You're driving yourself crazy." She was right. I flipped the book open again, running my fingers over the crisp, unyielding pages. It seemed to hum with a truth I wished it contained. Honestly, it was easier to think it was merely making things up as opposed to reflecting actual secrets I harbored. It told me it would be okay if I spoke to Michael. Now, it just sounded cruel. I tried confiding in Anne about the strangeness. What if it was just some devious psychological trick? She listened sympathetically, offering her thoughts, but veering away any time I suggested something supernatural at work. She believed more in the mundane. Maybe it was my mind subconsciously working through ideas or fears, maybe even simply a break from stress. She seemed uneasy around the journal, though, and I took some solace in knowing we didn't differ on this particular unsettling point. Saturday morning arrived, and I was still wrestling with what the damn confounding book, had suggested. Everything always came down to choices, and I hovered between anger at an unknown force intruding on my life and the crushing realization I'd likely been found out by someone. Michael would not let this slide, or Anne even. But there it sat propped on my bookshelf, taunting me with its wretched wisdom. I needed to see Michael, discuss what it said, or didn't say, as I was still clutching fleeting shreds of denial, and be done with it today, simply to restore some semblance of peace. The weight of lies was growing unbearable. He deserved the truth. I threw a glance through my half-drawn curtains just as the sky grew darker, noticing how quickly shadows gathered, merging into gloomy forms that seemed to spill across the neighborhood. Anxiety crept in at the corners of my mind, like an echo bouncing off walls, stiffening the corridors of rational thought. I imagined that even if I couldn't prove it, somewhere, the journal was smirking with secret satisfaction. Anne watched me dress silently, trailing my movements as I filled my lungs with the dull hope that this didn't end in catastrophe. "Call if you need anything," she urged, holding my gaze in softness only a good friend could offer. With reluctant gratitude, I stepped out the door. I decided if this was a prank, a ruse, or fate trying to correct a silent wrong, confronting the pieces that hadn't yet shattered seemed only reasonable. I was practically rehearsing scripts in my head, though humorously skipping ones that started with "a diary made me do it." Walking towards his place, I felt the journal was still there, tucked under my arm as if it could spring to life and whisper further secrets. Each step echoed with adrenaline-fueled determination. It felt like I was paying penance for thoughts I may not have deliberately acknowledged, now etched upon blank, aged pages somewhere back home. By the time I reached Michael's porch, anxiety was replaced with a resolute clarity. I rang the bell, half expecting the journal to transform back into just a regular book if I found he already knew everything. The door opened before my knuckles left the wood, his tired face looking puzzled more than angry. Before either of us could speak, Anne's call rang out. Her voice was shaky over the line. "The journal, it's blank now." And that's when I knew some chapters always remain unwritten.